Hey, I'm Sean Holyfield, CEO and founder of Secure HR. Secure HR was created by alumni of the University of Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, Yale, Notre Dame, NYU, Maryland, Florida, and the list goes on. Now, I'm not saying all this because we're smarter than anyone else. We're really not. We just did one thing that candidly other HR and software companies never bothered to do. We honestly applied logic to a very complicated problem, and then we followed it. So here's the logic. Compliance simply means that you're following all the rules. HR compliance simply means that a business is following all the HR rules and laws that apply to it. Naturally then, compliance starts by knowing which HR laws apply to a business, your business. All of the HR laws, every federal law, every state law, every local law. Logically then, if you want to get HR compliant, step one would be to go out and get every HR law. You would also need to have a way to keep those laws up to date daily so they didn't fall out of date, right? I mean, you can't really follow a law if it's out of date, and you need to start by getting it, making sure it's current, reading it, and then doing what it says. So none of this is really opinion, it's just logic. So we asked a few logical questions. Who has all the HR laws? How many HR laws are there? Who keeps those laws up to date and current? So we asked AI, Google, lawyers, payroll companies, HR compliance consultants, HR software companies, all these same questions. No one could answer the questions. Some were confused. Some said that it was impossible and that no one really knows how many laws there are. Some guessed, but admitted they didn't really know. And then some said it doesn't really matter. So we knew there was a flaw in the system. A logical step was skipped. The first step, actually. Someone had to go get all the HR laws. So we did just that. We spent years creating software and refining a proprietary process to get every HR law and keep them up to date. We called that software Watchtower. And after years of work, we finally had all the HR laws and a process to keep them up to date. We didn't do this because we're exceptional. We did this because it's the only place HR compliance can actually begin. Once again, that's not an opinion, that's just logic. We then wondered, if others don't have the laws, then how can they help businesses get fully HR compliant? I mean, how do they make sure that businesses aren't missing things? Where's the list of things that businesses need to do based on those laws? Once again, we asked AI, Google, lawyers, payroll software companies, HR compliance consultants, and HR software companies these questions. Some were defensive. Some said it was complicated. Some said it's impossible to have all of it. It's just not possible. Some said it really doesn't matter. So we knew there was another flaw in the system. Another logical step had been skipped. The second step, actually. Because logically, if you want to get HR compliant, the second step would be to read all of the laws, to create a list of all the things that businesses are required to do based on those laws. And we did just that. We read and understood the laws and the rules, and then we created lists of things that businesses are required to do based on those laws we had read. We called these HR checklists because a checklist is simply a to-do list, a list of things that need to get done. And after all, if you have a complete list of things that you have to do, then you aren't missing anything. And complete is compliant, plain and simple. Once again, that's not really opinion, that's just logic. So for years, we read laws and created HR checklists. And those laws and those checklists told us something else. HR compliance is way more than just a handbook. The HR laws require specific policies, procedures, documents, agreements, notices, posters, training. We call these things HR content. Thousands of policies are needed throughout the US. Thousands of notices and posters have to be shared. Hundreds of other types of HR content have to be available. It was a lot to create, like really a lot. So we then wondered, has someone already created all this HR content? I mean, we've seen posters and notices and we've seen handbooks. I mean, it has to be somewhere, right? So once again, we asked AI, Google, lawyers, payroll software companies, HR compliance consultants, and HR software companies these same questions. Some said they had some of the content. Some said no one has all of the content. Some said a handbook is good enough. And then some said that you just have to hire different companies to get it all together. So we knew there was another flaw in the system. There was another logical step that had been skipped. The third step, actually, because logically, if you want to get HR compliant, the third step would be to have all the required HR content that you must share with your employees based on the laws. So we built all of it. We spent years writing and creating HR content, policies, procedures, documents, agreements. We gathered notices and posters, and we created training. Because if the law requires it, and of course it does, then a solution that doesn't include all the HR content isn't really a solution at all. It's incomplete. And incomplete is not compliant. Once again, this isn't an opinion, that's just logic. So, after years of reading HR laws, creating HR checklists, and creating HR content, which took a lot of time, we discovered a pattern. Something surprisingly simple emerged from all of this research. HR compliance could be simply described as 3 steps. Step 1, have all the HR content you need to share with employees. Step 2, share that content with employees. And step 3, keep a record and be able to prove HR compliance. We then wondered, if none of these companies and consultants and lawyers had HR checklists or the laws, and they only had some of the content, then how did they actually make sure that the HR content got to employees? And then what did they do to prove HR compliance? I mean, they must, right? After all, they sell HR compliance products and services. Businesses buy those products and services. So once again, we asked AI, Google, lawyers, payroll software companies, HR compliance consultants, and HR software companies these questions. The answers were surprising. Some said that that's up to the business to figure out. Some said that it's complicated. Some didn't answer at all. Some said that it wasn't their job. So we knew there was another flaw in the system. Another logical step had been skipped. The final step, actually, proof of compliance. Logically, if the goal is to be HR compliant, then the final step must be to prove it. So we built it. We created the Secura HR Employee Portal and Employee Compliance Files, an easy way to share HR content and prove HR compliance. We built individual compliance files that automatically record every piece of HR content shared, with the exact day and time it was viewed, signed, or acknowledged by an employee. This was all done because if you can't prove compliance, you're not protected. This isn't opinion, it's logic. And here's the painful truth. Since 2000, for the past 26 years, over $1 billion has been paid each year settling employee lawsuits. Billion with a B, every year. And did you know that over 80% of those settled cases lacked any proof of wrongdoing? They were settled because HR content, documentation failures. In other words, policies were out of date, procedures were missing, training was skipped. Simply translated, the companies were missing required HR content or couldn't prove that employees had received it. No big scandals, just missing paperwork. So logically speaking, of course, if other HR companies or lawyers were really doing their job, then how did $1 billion get spent year after year for over 20 years on HR compliance documentation failures? Well, because no one made the time to get all the laws in the first place. This was the missing step that made everything else impossible to get right. As a result, no one was able to create HR checklists. HR content was incomplete, and proving compliance was simply not possible. You did your best. Here's what's funny about all this. None of what we've done is revolutionary. TurboTax did this for taxes years ago and still does this today. We simply did it for HR compliance. And it's not even genius, really. It's just what happens when you start with the right question. Not, how do we sell HR tools and services that make us money? But what does it actually take to get a business legally HR compliant and prove it? Now, if you follow that question logically and honestly all the way to the end, you get Secure HR every time. Visit securehr.com and see what happens when HR compliance is built the way it should have been, from the law up. Secure HR, logic applied, compliance delivered.